So welcome to the Pool of Life podcast with me, Neil Meekin. And this morning I'm in the beautiful Childwall Woods in South Liverpool with the incredible Paul Myers of Farm Urban. And it's a beautiful, crisp, cold but clear sunny day. And it's just a real pleasure to be here this morning. So I'll just talk about how I became connected to Paul, and then I'll hand over to Paul. So I first became aware of Farm Urban, well, maybe 3 years ago. And I was a program director for a maritime innovation program on Merseyside. And there was an academic from the University of Liverpool, Matt Fulton. And I was recruiting some companies, and he talked about Farm Urban at that time wasn't a fit. But when I looked at the company, I was just like, wow, this is mind blowing. Fast forward 2 years, and I was doing a workshop for One Knowsley, who represents the volunteer sector within Knowsley and Merseyside. And I was doing a lot of work with the food banks. They come in and run a workshop around what they need and what support they needed. And I was shocked by what I experienced, because I never really had any exposure to what was happening there. And it just made me think about like the food and the food system. And for whatever reason, Farm Urban came up again, like really strongly as like an intuition. And so I reached out to Olivia Greenberg, who's a mutual friend of ours, who then put me in touch. And then I spoke to Claire Lewis, who's a non-executive director for Farm Urban, who I've also done some work for Baltic Ventures. And so we met, and it was just like a synchronicity. It was really strange. And the rest is history. And I'm now obviously supporting you in consulting for Farm Urban. It's been an absolute dream for me. It's like one of the most amazing organisations. And I say that like with hand on heart. And I've worked and lived all over the world. It's like a really special organisation. That's why I wanted to interview you, because I see you as a real trailblazer.
Oh, thanks, mate.
And a real visionary. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Neil. Great to be here.
Yeah. So we've met here in Childwall Woods, and you're living not too far away from here on Wavertree. And it's really important to be in nature. What does Childwall Woods mean for you, being here?
I think Childwall Woods is a special place to me. So I grew up not too far from here. I used to come here as a kid. I can remember like with friends, was my dad when I was really young, and then friends who used to come and cause mischief in the woods and do things we shouldn't. And then, when we moved to Wavertree, I've always had dogs, and then we started walking the dog here regularly, and it's become a bit of a ritual. So every morning, Beth, my wife, and I will drop the kids at school, come and walk here for about 45 minutes. And it's just a great place to connect for Beth and I. Just check in on the day, the week, what's we got planned. But then just being in nature is really important part of my process. I think I've always had dogs, and dogs have been a really key part of that. I think it keeps me grounded. I was saying to you before, like just checking in on the rhythms of the seasons, I think is really important. And coming to the same place every day and seeing a change throughout the year is quite significant, and a reminder that, to work in sync with rhythms and nature as opposed to be fighting against it.
Yeah, it speaks to me of that connectedness to nature, because you imagine like a lot of people who may be working within an organisation, they'll just get up in the morning, they'll get in the car, drive to work, or get to the train, get to the office, be in an office all most of the day, strip lights, like just an unnatural environment. Come home, potentially a bit knackered, just go back in the house. They maybe go to the gym, but then they go to bed, and it's like on repeat.
Yeah.
So to have that opportunity to be in nature every morning and be connected to those rhythms, it's amazing. So what does, if you give you like 3 words, what it gives you, like what would it be? The nature connection.
I think it gives me space, peace, and energy.
What a way to start the day.
Yeah.
So you say you grew up not far from here. Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, so I was born in Broad Green, a bit east of here, I think, and I lived there till I was about 10, 11. Went to Childwall at primary school, which is not far at all from where we are today, and then moved to Wilton, which again isn't far, about when I was about 12, and then lived there till I was 18. Then took a trip around the world, and then came back and...
Oh, hold on a minute. You took a trip around the world. Go on, tell me a little bit more about that. Where did you go? What did you do?
So I was adamant that I wanted to leave Liverpool. All through my childhood, I was dead set on,
How interesting.
yeah. And then I think it was Beth's sister was going traveling, and I'd never really come across anyone who'd been traveling before. And I was like, what do you mean you're going traveling? And she said, oh no, I'm going to go to Tasmania, and I'm going to go to Thailand. And I just got really intrigued by this idea of taking time out and travel. When it gets something in my mind, I'm like, right, that's what I'm doing. We set up a little business, earned some money over the summer after sixth form, and then I did 4 months charity work for an organization called Rally International. So we were in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama, and we did a nature project, a community project, and then a trek. And it was just that period was really transformational for me in many ways. A lot of nature introduced me to kind of indigenous communities, just took me away from the kind of Western world and Western culture. And I think I experienced like true happiness from some of the poorest, materially poorest people that I've ever met, living in adobe, some mud brick houses, no running water, no electricity, grew a lot of their own food, but they were just rich in a way that I'd not experienced before. So that kind of really shifted something in my mind. Yeah, so it was a special time, challenging, but special time. Then we went on to go around Thailand, New Zealand, Australia, and did more of the fun party type things. But up at that point, I'd had a place to study law, and I was going to be this, in my mind, this like high-flying lawyer driving a Porsche. That's what I wanted. But that trip just completely changed my worldview, and decided I wanted to do something a bit more practical, closely linked to kind of nature, biology, thought about medicine, just this idea of actually living a life in service of others, I think was the key takeaway from that time.
Well, it's interesting because like, you look at 18-year-olds now and like, they seem so young, but you went on that trip at that particular time, a lad from Liverpool who'd been in the city and then getting exposed to those different experiences. Maybe we can, as we go more into the conversation later, maybe touch back on how that maybe directly influenced what's come later with Farm Urban, because that would have been a profound experience.
Yeah, it was. I don't think I realised it at the time, but it definitely was.
Well, now you're back in Liverpool. You're considering obviously going to university. You've got your place in law. So what changed?
Well, I deferred entry, so I had a little bit of time, and I just came back. And I did some work experience with a barrister, and he just was really brutally honest with me. And he's like, "See that? It was like a little suitcase on wheels." He said, "See that suitcase there? That's my life, and it's full of papers and documents, and you're going to sit and you're going to go through those, and that's going to be your life." And I was like, "Oh, that's not me. I'm a hands-on, practical, creative person. I think that would just destroy me if I did that." And I really, really value and appreciate the reality of or his honesty in that, because I think I had a romantic idea that I'd be in court arguing and
LA law.
Yeah, LA law, exactly that. Yeah. So I decided that maybe medicine would be something I'd be interested in, but I didn't have the right A-levels. So I got a place to study anatomy and human biology at Liverpool Uni. And it was just an incredible time. Just really immersed myself in biology and the natural world. And we studied comparative anatomy over hundreds of thousands of years, and psychology and the effect of drugs on the brain. And we did human dissection and plant physiology, just like a really broad but also deep dive into the natural world, I suppose. And I think that I was like biology at school, but that just really lit something inside of me around this like love of learning and in the whole enriching process. So yeah, I loved university from that perspective. And then was still thinking about medicine, but just, I suppose that the medical system and the NHS, I was a little bit skeptical and thought, ooh, is that really where I belong? Would I work? Would that play to the best of my strengths and abilities and skills? And then my third year, dissertation project supervisor, got on really well with him, Professor Quinn. He's a great guy, and just said, you sure medicine's where you want to go? You think about science, you could travel all over the world, do some really interesting stuff. And he encouraged me to do a placement in Wyoming with the chair in neurobiology there. So Beth and I took a trip, flew to New York, had a week in New York, which was incredible.
Just to check things out, you mean? There's a little bit of a reconnaissance?
Yeah, it was like a 6-week placement at the end of my undergrad, just to see what science was like. And I think John knew if I went over there and met those people, I'd get the bug a little bit. Yeah. So then we got the Amtrak train right across America to Colorado, and then got the Greyhound from Colorado up to Wyoming, which was just a great trip in and of itself.
Like, that just sounds amazing, because Wyoming is one of those places that are, you know, it's in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? It's not like on the coast, or like, it's not like Texas. It's Wyoming. It's nothing's there.
Yeah, and just worked in this neuroscience lab for 6 weeks and met some really lovely people. And went up to Yellowstone National Park, and weirdly, at the time I was there in Laramie University, the guy who founded the vertical farming technology, I'm sure we'll come on to, was actually studying his PhD, developing that very technology at that same time, but I was completely unaware.
In the same university?
Yeah.
How interesting.
So did that, then came back and thought, maybe a PhD in science would be interesting, and then got onto a Wellcome Trust, NIH funded PhD studentship.
Just a quickie, so the Wellcome Trust, just for people who are listening, what is the Wellcome Trust? Just gives just a short, like,
the Wellcome Trust is a large foundation that was founded by Henry Wellcome, and that they essentially have a large investment portfolio, and the profits from that investment fund biomedical research.
So they sponsored your PhD.
The NIH, which is the US government research facility, sponsored a PhD studentship for 4 years. Yeah,
because that's important to note. I've said Paul Myers, but it's actually Dr. Paul Myers. So talk a little bit about that experience, because that's one of the things that when I first started becoming more aware of who you are, because you did a TED Talk in Liverpool, I think it was back in 2016, and you talked about like that experience of being in America. You were in Washington, DC.
Yeah.
And what you were working on and what shifted for you then. And just want to touch on something there about the importance of certain people who come into your life at a particular time who have an influence, because you talked about the lady who was doing the travelling, ongoing travelling, and then it's opened you up to something. And obviously Professor Quinn, who's a bit of a, you've connected with him and trust him, and he's, we thought about this, and these people along our way, as you look back on your life, who've been a bit of a signpost for us, to move us in a particular direction. So I just wanted to note that. So talk about Washington.
Yeah, that again was a really interesting, challenging chapter for me. So I was dead set. I was full of naive optimism is a theme, as a core value. I don't know if it's a value, but I've got a lot of it. So I was naively optimistic that I was going to become this great scientist and, discover all wonderful things. So I had first year in Liverpool was incredible. Met some amazing people, worked with John Quinn, just again, deepened the love for science and molecular biology, and on a whole new level. And then went to the States, and it was, it was like quite a prestigious PhD. There was only like 4 of them offered globally, this NIH Wellcome Trust funded PhD. So it was kind of not so much pressure, but it was a big deal that I'd got it, and then just ended up this young Scouser full of naive optimism in this, the NIH is like a city. It's like a mini city just full of the top scientists from all over the world, function at a very, very high level. And so it just showed me what excellence looks like in academia and in that sense. And I again met some incredible scientists, but something wasn't sitting right with me, even though I could appreciate this facility and the technology and the money. My research was focusing on how the environment affects your health through your DNA and the molecular pathways there.
Which is called epigenetics.
Epigenetics, yeah. And what I saw, it just felt a little bit at odds with my sort of worldview. So you touched on it at the start, a lot of people getting in at like 7 a.m, hunched over a desk in a dark room with artificial light in the pursuit of science. But I was like, this isn't healthy. A can of Coke and a Mars bar for your lunch every day. Like, there's just something very at odds with how you're living your life and what you're trying to do. And the whole, I suppose, pharmaceutical biomedical system, I started to feel a little bit concerned around that and how the money was flowing and the pressure to publish and where that funding was coming from and links to big pharma, and it just didn't feel aligned with
Values.
my values and how I wanted to live personally, but then also how I thought things should be done. And you know, it felt like, well, if people got outside more, if people ate better food, if they were connected to nature, less stress, actually a lot of this inflammation, this chronic disease that we're tucked away in labs trying to develop drugs for, just eradicate it. And I firmly believe that, you know, not entirely, significantly do away with it. So I think that was another pivotal time that I was kind of wrestling against. Oh, I've got this really prestigious PhD, you know, I've got this career that could go in science. For the first time in my life, I just felt like I was hitting a brick wall. Like I was grinding away, putting in, like, the hours were, the work culture there is different. So I'd be like in the lab at 7 and graft, and I wouldn't leave till 10 p.m. These experiments, I was so bought in and committed and trying so hard, and it just wasn't getting the results that I wanted on many different levels. It just the biggest learning was this isn't where you're supposed to be, and there's no flow here. And so I came back from the US having learned a lot, learned where I didn't want to be, learned what I didn't want to be doing.
Which is very important. It's just as important to know what you don't want.
Yeah.
As much as what you do want.
Yeah. And I think looking back, I don't think I realised just how much I'd learned during that experience.
Yeah.
But like you say, in the scientific world, we call it negative data.
Okay.
Which often you don't publish the negative data because you're not getting the result you want. But actually it's really important because it shows you where you don't want to be and what is not working.
So how old were you at this particular time? In the 20s?
Yeah, it'd be like 22 to 20. Yeah, about 22.
All right, so let's think about this. So you're 22. You've set up a company.
Not at that point.
No, but you've done a little business when you left, when you were sort of around school to earn a bit of dough.
18, I set up a landscaping and block paving company, yeah.
Yeah, so you've set up a company.
Yeah.
You've been to Central and South America.
Yeah.
Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
You've been in one of the most prestigious science environments in the world.
Yeah.
For 4 years. Obviously, you've been in Liverpool doing your uni, but like you're only 22. Like that's hot. There's a lot of experience there already at 22.
Yeah.
I'm not comparing you to anyone. I'm just naming what I'm hearing. It's like a lot of richness there, you know, that's already there at a young age.
Yeah. And I suppose it's not until you, and this is, I think, is a theme that's been there a lot for me, is, you know, you look back and you think, oh, I don't tend to reflect too much. I'm very focused on what's ahead of me and moving forward. So that is all true. But at that point in my life, I was like just striving and pushing for where I wanted to be and the next challenge. But yeah, I think it is good. And again, nature, I think sitting in nature really helps me to reflect because it's not particularly naturally part of my process.
To reflect
and I'm doing this more recently, reflect and give gratitude and acknowledge sort of my experiences and what I even now saying that the word achieved, it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, you know, okay. But it feels, yeah.
So I'm going to jump forward a little bit, well, a lot. And, you know, some of the practices that you've got around, because you talk about being more grateful for things, like you have a morning ritual, which you talk about coming here with Beth.
Yeah.
But like, what does you get up at an early time, don't you? Maybe get up at 5. What's your morning ritual for people listening to this? Be like, okay, this is.
Yeah. So the morning ritual is become just so important to me. And I would say I've been experimenting and trialing and testing and developing it for like 15 years. Like
the scientific method on yourself.
The scientific method of what is, you know, what's the morning ritual that really works. And I feel certainly where I am now, I've got one that is so valuable to me and kind of create space for so much more. So I tend to get up at 5:30. I'll journal for 15, 20 minutes on a Monday. I'll kind of tee the week up. So I'll write down only one page of A5 in a very specific notebook with a very specific pen. I'll write down my purpose. I'll write down what that is, why I want to achieve that. Then I will write gratitude. I'll write some reflections on the day or the week before. Then I'll write five or six affirmations, and then I'll set some intentions for that day.
For the day itself?
For the day itself and for the week. So I'm working more on a week basis now. So I've locked in on a Monday, right? That's what's happening this week. And it creates a set of boundaries and parameters then that's very difficult for anything to sort of come in and throw me off, because before the noise in my brain's turned on, I've got the clarity of like, this is what I'm going to achieve this week and this is what I'm going to achieve today. So once I've done that, I'll stretch a little bit, and then I'll do a shred fast workout. I'll shout out to shred fast. It's incredible. For 45 minutes. Then I'll take a shower, get a cold shower, and then 7 o'clock. And then I'll wake Beth up and the kids. So I've set myself up before I even engage with my wife and kids. Then we'll have 7 till 8. That's like getting the kids ready for school, doing their breakfast, pack lunches, drop them at school. And then I'm in the woods with Beth and a coffee for 8:30.
And then, like, your day, do you tend to do like a standard day where you'll work maybe until 4 or 5, or do you go and kid the kids, or then do you have like time with them and then maybe do a little bit of work of an evening time? What does that look like?
Yeah, again, that's something that I've, especially having young kids, it's really, and for business, it's just, it's really challenging to find the rhythm that works for the family and the business and myself. I feel like I'm in a good place with that now. So as I said, we'll walk here from 8:30 till sort of 9:15, and then my working day, in a classic sense, will start at 9:15, and then I'll typically work till 4:30 with quite an intensity, and then I'll be around for 4:30 till 5 while Beth's doing the dinner and the kids. Then we'll eat dinner at 5, and then get the kids up for 7, and then about 8 o'clock I'll do some more work, probably 8 till 10, half 10, and then that's the day, Monday to Friday.
Monday to Friday. Yeah, because in Farm Urban, we'll talk about Farm Urban next, which is the company you co-founded with Jens Thomas and who you're the managing director of. Is that there's a 4-day week, isn't it? That's been experimented with at the moment.
Trialing it out, yeah.
Trialing it out, yeah. Just what you're saying, 5 days. Yeah, thanks for that, because it's certainly my belief that having like a structure. But it goes back to the masculine and the feminine and the balance of the both, and the masculine in its purest form being the structure, and the feminine being like the relating and having the space between the two, and how you manage your day, like the balance between the two energies.
Yeah.
Like they unfold over the course of the day, but having that ritual at the start of the day, which creates the solid foundation from which to build on, because you can maybe get up out of bed, like maybe start your work, but like, oh, I'm not right sure, I'm just going to follow the day, and all of a sudden you're off on a tangent and you're doing calls, and then like you're not moving on to something else because there's a mental load in the context switching. Having like a very clear understanding and clarity about the day and have some structure and really help with your productivity and your efficiency, I believe.
100%. And I think it's you very early on when we first met, you talked about integrating the masculine and the feminine, and I think I'd struggled with that. There's this like guilt, I should be doing more, I should be working harder, which I feel can be quite a masculine energy, and that efficiency. But then there's sort of natural rhythms within me which are very, the feminine energy, and I think exactly what you've just described there, how I say is that rigid framework gives me so much freedom and flexibility to operate within it. And it's a kind of a paradox, because if you describe that regime to people, they think that's like pretty regimented and strict. But when I'm in it, I've just got so much more freedom to operate, and flexibility, and that feminine energy and creative flow can come through, because I feel safe within the bounds of the parameters that I've put in place. I can't be derailed, or other thoughts or distractions don't come in, so I can really focus on those important tasks.
Yeah, it's very profound, like this. Well, it's essentially it's not just Eastern. It's more prominent in Eastern philosophy. I say Eastern philosophy, like India, China, like Taoism. But that's the way that we're meant to operate, that dance between the two. It's a conversation and a podcast in and of itself. So I'm not gonna dive too deeply into it. But we will move on to farm urban. So farm urban being a Liverpool based social enterprise. And yeah, tell us more about like farm urban. And I know it obviously intimately because I do some work with you, but how did that start? You know, going back when you've come back from Washington.
Yeah.
What's happening?
So I came back from Washington feeling quite disillusioned with science, probably unfairly so now, but at that point I was just like, this isn't where it's at. This is certainly not where I want to be. And then I went to a transition town meeting in the Quaker Centre in Liverpool.
Okay, transition town. I know what it is, but for people who maybe don't know what it is, what is transition town?
So it was a movement, I forget the guy's name, but that was set up where people were looking at, I think it starts in Totnes, like how can we transition to a more sustainable way of living? So there was this concept of transition towns, and then groups of people would meet to say, what can we do locally in our village or town or city to transition to a more sustainable way of operating.
And from, I think it was from fossil fuels as well.
Yeah, moving away
like
from
the peak oil concept.
Yeah. So I managed to drag Beth and our 6-week-old baby to this transition town meeting, and
she was made up.
She was not made up. And the particular talk on that day wasn't really doing it for Beth, so she stepped out with the baby, and Jens stepped out as well, and they got chatting
by accident.
Yeah, just by accident.
She didn't know who he was.
He didn't know her. They got chatting, and she said she's a great networker, Beth. She's like, who are you? Yeah. What are you doing here? And he said that he was studying his PhD at Liverpool. He was really interested in permaculture. He'd just come back from living on a permaculture ranch in Argentina. And she was like, oh, you've got to meet my husband. Like, this is his vibe. You'll love, So we exchanged details, and then neither of us followed up. And then I went to a circuit class in the Liverpool uni, and I saw him. I was like, oh, there's that guy. I felt guilty that we didn't follow up. So it kind of like led on again. And we're like, oh, we really should follow up. And we'd both lost each other's details. So we swapped details again. I said, oh, definitely follow up, definitely.
What year is this, like 2012, 2013?
Yeah, 2012, 13. So then, exchanged details again. And then neither of us followed up. Again. And then I used to go to a little cafe on Lark Lane called Green Days, a little vegetarian cafe.
Mate. Green Days.
Yeah.
Is legendary.
Yeah.
So when I used to DJ professionally back in the day, on the Saturday afternoon, like a group of DJs used to meet in Green Days and get a veggie brekkie.
And I think, what Green Days, like you say, people have certain times in your life. That to me, it kind of embodied through food where I wanted to be. It was high quality. It was really clean food. There was a great culture in there. Like, it was just a special place.
It was a special place.
And the kitchen was like the size of this bench that was sat on. It was tiny. I don't know how Carol did it.
Legendary place, Carol. Yeah.
So anyway, we were in there. I saw Jens. I thought, shit, there he is again. So I ducked my head and he ducked his head, and we kind of ignored each other. And then this is over a course of about 3 or 4 months. I went to a boxercise class and he was in there again. And I was like, oh, mate, this is too weird that we keep bumping into each other. So we trained, we did that circuit together, and it was just a very bizarre, profound experience. We had shared interests in permaculture, we're molecular biology, quantum physics. We both trained Thai boxing. So Thai boxing, like science nerds are kind of... And
like two peas in a pod.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, very different characters, but at the same time, so many shared interests and passions. And then we just became friends. And we went to visit a project in Manchester called the Biospheric Project, which a guy called Vinnie Walsh, really pioneering guy, as part of his PhD, taken over an old warehouse and converted it into this integrated urban farm with fish tanks and hydroponics on the roof, and he's grown mushrooms in there, and it was really inspiring. So Jens and I said, is there a way we could do something similar in Liverpool? But no one would give us a warehouse or, I don't know, £500,000 to do it. So we ended up just speaking to lots of different people and found that there was an appetite for that, like doing kind of bringing together science, innovation, food growing in the city. And almost by accident just said, should we set up a company? And we would set up a non-profit, got the business cards printed, and just started going to events. And
that was the start.
That was the start, yeah.
So when you first met, I didn't realise this. So it wasn't until you went to Manchester that the idea started to emerge of the urban farm concept.
When I was back in the US, I went down a rabbit hole on, YouTube and Netflix, and there was a guy called Will Power who set up something in, I think it was Detroit or Chicago, and he set up this hydroponics and aquaponics urban farm, and I was like, that is it. Growing food in the city, reconnecting people to fresh, healthy food, like just something just switched in my brain. I was like, I love that. So I think when I came back to the UK, that's what sparked the interest in transition towns and sustainability and food. And so it started in America. I think the seed was planted there, and then coming back and meeting Jens and just sort of exploring what was going on close to us was already happening. And then the Biospheric Project was like, wow, he's doing what we've been thinking about and talking about. So I think that I was like, well, if they can do it, we can do it. And then my competitive edge came through, and a lot of naive optimism.
Here it is again.
Yeah.
So at that time, the Biospheric Project, obviously then you're starting to think about setting something up in Liverpool. Was there, I imagine there wasn't much around, maybe a little something happening in London, but at that particular time, was there much happening in that space in the UK?
Yeah, not in the urban or vertical farming space. There was stuff going on in Bristol, the Bristol Fish Project, focused on aquaponics. And then in Liverpool, it was more, there was definitely like a sort of green, low carbon-ish agenda. And there was a few meetings, and a guy, Jerry Proctor, was one of the early people we met through Engage. He was doing, having interesting conversations in the city. So we started to attend a few events, and then I think just built the network out from there.
Okay, so again, I know a lot of people who are listening to this podcast won't know what hydroponics or aquaponics is. I know a lot of Scousers.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what hydroponics are. So if in your ways, like, yeah. what are they both?
So hydroponics is growing plants in water. So it's a way of cultivating vegetables, salads in water, so without soil, where you add nutrients directly to the water. And aquaponics is a variation of that, where you bring fish into the mix, and the waste from the fish will fertilize the plants, and the plants in turn will clean the water for the fish.
Yeah, very circular. Because you started more so, I believe, with the fish, with aquaponics.
Yeah.
And then moves more onto hydroponics.
Yeah, I think that the circular nature of that system, it just made sense. And I was just like, this is just so clever, but also so simple and engaging. So the early systems we put in on the roof of the university, Alder Hey Children's Hospital, and Nest Botanical Gardens were all aquaponic. And then we started to bring in some researchers and got some grants and collaborated with scientists from the University of Liverpool, and realised that the aquaponics, the fish bit, were challenging in two ways. One, they're expensive and risky, and the business model's really difficult.
The systems or the fish?
Well, both. And then also they're difficult to scale. So if we were going to try and scale it to cut out the fish and just focus on the hydroponics, the plants in the water, made more sense.
Oh, the first proper farm per se would be in Liverpool, in the basement of a school.
Yeah, so we'd done a few sort of, I suppose, satellite projects. So the rooftop of the University of Liverpool was our first aquaponics project. Then then the first large scale hydroponic farm was in the basement, so in the Baltic Triangle.
Yeah, okay, that's pre my time of farm there. When you were there for a couple of years.
We were there from about 2013 till 2019.
And then you moved into the farm at Brunswick in South Liverpool.
Yeah, actually, no, those dates are wrong. So the UCC was about 2015, so it must have been 2022. And then, 2022, 2023, we moved into Brunswick Dock.
Yeah, which is it was the original Uber. But
Yeah.
it was originally, it was obviously storage for the shipping industry in Liverpool way back.
Yeah.
But it was the Uber headquarters, the
Uber-
taxi company, and you moved in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well. So what is Farm Urban today? I mean, because like it's as I said at the start when I did the introduction, it's like it's a really potent organisation, and even still, like within the Liverpool City region, people just aren't aware fully of like just the amazing work that gets done because it's a what I would say a systems led innovation agency. I would say that happens to grow letters.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's just my view.
Yeah.
Just because of the incredible trailblazing work that you've done with the NHS, doing the project in big project in Manchester, which you talk about Plymouth. Like we're doing this big project in South London, looking at children's health and building food ecosystems. Okay, and Scotland, we've got the project in Scotland as well. So just want to talk about that particular project in South London. Not about that project specifically, but the fact that like there's an opportunity where there's a creation of a sustainable food system growing highly nutritious produce within an urban environment at scale in different neighbourhoods across boroughs and why that is potentially needed. So I want to ask you about like the food system in general. I agree, we maybe touch back on the TED Talk when, you did that TED Talk back in 2016. Because the food system is like I was going to swear then, but I won't. But it's a bit of a cluster, F-U-C-K, and like the way that the supply chain is, the over extraction of like fish, the soil degradation, like monocrops, like the fact that like within the UK, if you go into a supermarket, fill your trolley with food, look like more of the fresh produce, where the food's coming from is wild.
Yeah.
Wild, and it's not sustainable.
No. Yeah, I think that was one of the kind of early concepts around the food system that really challenged my thinking. Was this is incredibly unsustainable and really wasteful and not good for people. Not entirely, but more than you might think. So what can we do about that? And I think urban farming and vertical farming and hydroponics certainly isn't. It's not a silver bullet, but it plays a part in that solution. And I think it, in many ways, punches above its weight, because if you can grow food in cities hyperlocally in a sustainable way and make it visible, you're reconnecting people to food and where it comes from. And once you've eaten food that is super fresh, packed full of nutrients that you've grown yourself or has been grown close to you, I've seen it, in people of all ages, it lights something up inside you. And in some ways, you kind of can't go back from that then. So when you go to the supermarket and you buy the shitty food that's come from all over the world and been in storage for, weeks and cold store, and it's just, it's not the same. I think that's why, people who have allotments or grow their own, they have a different relationship with food. So it's how can we do allotments? They all dig for victory, but like at scale in a high tech way that's fit for this kind of century.
That complements.
Yeah.
More, because you'd like to see more food being able to be grown, where people have got gardens or the space becomes available, to be able to grow food. But that's the thing what blew me away when I first came to the farm, when I first started to do some work with Farm Urban, was that, and again, just seeing it with different visitors that come in, where we've run like experience days and people come onto the farm, where they've seen the produce and they're just like, wow, it's like it's a thing of one of beauty. But two, it's the smell. And three, when you taste that produce, it tastes like it's supposed to. And the nutrition and the nutritional value that's in that produce, compared to, like you say, like a lettuce that's wrapped in plastic, that's half dead. So you think you're eating food.
Fresh produce, yeah.
But it's actually half.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say, but it's half. I can't say for every piece of vegetable. But it's like, it's massively reduced the amount of nutrition that's in that vegetable.
Yeah, and I think that there's,
compared to what's on the farm.
Yeah, there's a variety of reasons for that, and they kind of stack and compound each other. And I suppose really want to say, like, I'm a massive advocate for soil-based produce.
Of course.
So regenerative agriculture that's regenerating soils is key. unfortunately, that's not how most produce is grown. Like you say, the soil's been eroded and degraded and abused for 40 years, pumped full of chemicals. So that natural fertility, that ecosystem that used to exist, soil's a living thing. In a handful of soil, there's more living things than there are people on the planet.
It's wild.
Which is wild, yeah. But when you
Blows your
really
mind.
think about that, and we've destroyed that. So soil now, like in southern Spain, Almeria, it's just the dust bowl there. We've just pumped it full of chemicals, grown in monoculture for decades, and we've killed all that life. So the soil now, in most cases, is just an empty vessel that takes more chemicals, PK, that we pump in, and pesticides. So a carrot that you maybe was grown 50 years ago in soil, and grow a carrot in that same soil now, the nutrients, the vitamins, the phytonutrients that are in there that are what's so good for us, they are 50% less. So that's just a fact of what we're dealing with, which is why regenerative agriculture, soil-based agriculture is so important. But while we regenerate soils, hydroponics, vertical farming offers, a solution to part of that, because we can control the nutrients that go in. They're all recirculated. They stay in the plant. We use about 90% less water. We can grow 2 to 3 times faster, and right in the heart of cities, close to where it's going to be consumed.
Yeah, because that's important, because like there's not as many, what would you call them? Is it called food miles? But I suppose it's like there's less carbon being emitted from the from the movement of these products, whether by air or by sea. It's like it's actually grown in the area where it's needed. And then another important thing to note is, going back to what's happening in South London, and we've done it, and obviously we do it in Liverpool in the farm, is the ability to grow produce because of the environment that's created for produce that would only be able to be grown in West Africa.
Yeah.
As an example, as well as other countries, that's culturally appropriate to people that are, maybe in the city that like can't grow that produce.
Yeah.
And there's an ancestral connection there, and we're able to grow highly potent produce from those particular areas, and the benefit of that, because we had an experience, didn't we, with a food bank in Tyber Street in Liverpool, with an Ethiopian kale.
Yeah.
Where obviously there was an Ethiopian community there, and like there was obviously lettuce going in, and there's obviously loads of different tins. It's like, we don't normally use this. Obviously the Ethiopian lady who made the request, and then we were able to then take the seed, find the seed for that particular product she was talking about, come back a few weeks later, and give her a bag of this Ethiopian kale. She absolutely blew her head off, and what that did for her.
Yeah, I think
the importance of food.
Yeah, there's so much in that, the heritage of people's heritage, where they come from, and food's such a key factor in that.
Absolutely.
And it's a great leveler as well. It's a great way to kind of share cultural connections and connect with people.
Belonging.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something really interesting about the vertical farming, because we can, another word for it is controlled environments. So we can create the environmental conditions that the plant wants to thrive. So it can be like a warm Tuscan day, a summer's day in our farm in mid-January.
Yeah, 365 days a year, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and then now that we've got the kind of salad crops and the kales and the chards, we're starting to ask, well, what else can we grow? And why should we grow that? And some of the projects in Manchester and South London, working with, and Liverpool, diverse communities, we're asking them, what's a taste of home to you? Is it Thai holy basil? Is it callaloo? Is it dasheen leaf? Is it amara? And then it's kind of social innovation from the ground up. So the communities that we're working with are telling us what they want to see grown, and then we'll take it to the lab and say, well, can it be grown? Coffee, cocoa, yams, okra, all of these things we're trialing, experimenting, which is great for us. And then also, if they work as a crop, then we can give those back to the communities.
Yeah, it's a real enabler, isn't it? That wouldn't normally be able to be done, but through this technology, it enables so much.
Yeah, and as well as the food, we're seeing more now, which is something I'm really, really is kind of lighting me up, is sort of skills and jobs and employment. Like you said, we supply a lot of food banks and food pantries, and there's people there that have been displaced, they're under-resourced, they've got a lack of opportunity. And actually urban farming, it's a high-tech, meaningful job. And I really love this idea of local people from these communities becoming the urban farmers of the future, especially given, I think the average age of a farmer in the UK is 65, and they're getting fucked by the government left, right, and centre with all their policies. So, can we grow our new generation of urban farmers that have got meaningful employment, upskilling themselves, bringing in technology, and reconnecting people to healthy food?
Well, I suppose on that note, like, what do you see in the future? Given that we're an island nation and we're so reliant, on other countries for our food, is there a future for this technology?
Yeah, I think there is. I think it kind of depends on how seriously we take the fact that we are so dependent on imports, and how seriously we acknowledge how destructive current agricultural practices are globally, environmentally. So, the food system accounts for about 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions.
It's a lot.
And I heard a quote which really blew me away, which was, the human jaw is the most powerful and destructive weapon from an environmental perspective, because every bite of food we take is taken from the earth in a negative way currently, and we need to change that. So governments, scientists, they need to acknowledge how destructive our current food system is, but it's difficult because it's so big, it's so necessary, it's a big messy problem to solve, as the whole climate agenda is. So I think if government backs this industry, Japan's a great example. They got a lot of subsidy around energy and to start businesses in this sector, and now a lot of those businesses are thriving. So I think vertical farming, with the right investments from UK governments, with the right investment from research organisations, foundations, we can really start to make significant shifts to produce super nutritious, healthy, clean food locally that doesn't, cliche, but like cost the earth, that isn't destructive.
Yeah. And it's like, food is medicine.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, thinking about the project that was done with Alder Hay Children's Hospital, with this highly nutritious food that's giving the children the nutrition that they need, but like not just for the children, but going forward, everybody having access to, in a very fair and equitable way, healthy, nutritious produce.
Yeah, I mean, it should, in one of the wealthiest nations in the world, everyone should have access to fresh, nutritious produce.
Yeah.
And again, if it kind of brings back my disillusion with some of the scientific and medical systems, like we spend so much money on healthcare with all this innovation and drug discovery and these pharmaceutical interventions. How about we think of food and agriculture in the same way and invest money to prevent these issues rather than trying to, manage disease,
which is downstream. So it's the old upstream, downstream. It's like it's addressing it at its root. Where, well, again, excuse the pun. It's like because that's remarkable about because the food that's being eaten is contributing to a lot of. I mean, it's one aspect, but it's an important aspect. The food that we're eating having like a detrimental effect to people's health.
Yeah,
highly processed, ultra processed foods. And, when you talk about like the science, I remember like early this year, me and you went to a conference at the O2 in London for the Future Food Tech conference. And like, they talk about like these advances in science of like future food. And it was just like, this isn't food.
No.
It's artificial, like highly processed, like lab grown food. There's a, I don't want to, conscious not to get on me high horse, but there's an abundance of land.
Yeah.
Within the UK. It's privately owned, but like, it's certain policies, systems, structures, this shouldn't be this way, or it's almost like holding back the ability to grow the food in the first place in this country. There's enough land.
Yeah, there is. And, I don't want to seem too negative and pessimistic around, because, sciences and technology is a part of what we do. But you're right, there's a lot of it that's has been misused over the last few, since the 80s, like what they've done to food and how they've messed around with it and processed it. And you just have to look at the flow of finance.
Follow the money.
There's a lot of people who've made an awful lot of money out of what I would call, it's not real food. And in fact, it's killing and killed millions of people. But if you look at farmers who are trying to grow fresh, healthy produce, natural food, is there a way that we can kind of shift that balance of power and finance and
to them?
Yeah. And a phrase that, I've used for quite a while is stop subsidizing the problem and start investing in the solution.
Oh, I like that.
So, agriculture, a lot of kind of chemical industrial agricultural practices are heavily subsidized, and we need to kind of shift that more to investing in some clean, green, healthy alternatives.
Yeah.
So I think it's bringing together innovation, science, investment, subsidy, and just start to shift, acknowledge that the current system is pretty unhealthy and it's not good for people or planet. What alternatives can we do? And it is happening. There are research funding calls out there and policies that are being looked at, and we're involved in those conversations. But I just think we need to push that a little bit harder. It needs to happen faster.
And just get people reconnected to the food, because once you're connected to the food, to know where it comes from. And one of a profound experience for me was when I lived in New Zealand. I sort of initially moved out there because I wanted to be off grid and live in a more sustainable way and be totally self-sufficient. Got involved in deer hunting and hunting my own food. I know when you kill a deer and then you have to skin it and process it, it was very traumatic the first time I did it. But when you get like meat on there, we could argue it should even be eating industrially produced meat. But like when you're getting like a tray of a steak from a sheep or any other food, like you don't understand where it comes from. But when you understand where it comes from, maybe certain things would change about how you behave and understand food and what it is. Especially when we look at ultra processed food and what's in there and what it is that's actually in there.
Yeah.
And the effect it has on your body. And the practices that have been, like palm oil, for example, of how that's being produced. Taking that into your body. Go on.
Yeah, I think we talk about whole food.
What is whole food?
Yeah, and it really irritates me because whole food is just food. And all this other stuff should be called quasi-food or pseudo-food because it's not really food. And so, there's lots of talks around diets and which diet's good for you and bad for you and what should you eat and what shouldn't you eat. But I think Michael Pollan's done amazing work on this. It's like, just eat real food, not too much, a lot of plants. That's it. Like, the more you mess around with it, the worse it gets usually. Plants, vegetables, herbs, meat, some meat, fats, natural, unprocessed, unmessed with. Like, that's the good stuff. It's as with so many things, the solution's simple, but it's how do we get there that's kind of complicated.
Well, there's an education piece, that's one of the amazing things that Farm Urban offers is like the education programs within the primary schools, secondary schools, getting kids connected to food, growing food, understanding about sustainability, just empowering them and getting them connected and understanding about the importance of it. And obviously the stuff that's within communities around education and putting produce into local communities as well. I mean, that's part of like the wider system innovation approach of Farm Urban, which is really important. Because it's not just like the food as well. It's like, it's connection and exercise, but like food, well, food we die and having access to good quality food. Well, this, again, the whole of the podcast episode here. So just as we start to bring this to a close now, there's an exciting project that Farm Urban is involved in now, which is, with a design agency in London, looking at home systems for growing. For growing lettuce at home. So do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, so obviously we've got our main vertical farm, hydroponic farm in Liverpool, and then we've got these projects around the country that you've touched on, London, Manchester, Scotland, which will be versions of that replicated. We also have our satellite systems that we put into offices and schools and universities, hospitals, which think of a vending machine but instead of being filled with crisps and chocolates and sugar water, it's got living fresh salads, herbs, edible flowers, good food in. And I've always loved the idea of, people being able to have a smaller one of those in their home. So through 1% for the Planet, we've met an incredible design company called V2 Studios, who are collaborating with our current designer and fabricator. I've taught design and fabrication to bring together a kind of home system that's affordable and accessible for people. So yeah, it's one of the projects that I'm really excited about, that I'm working on at the moment. And Beth, she's we were talking before, she's a perfectionist and she's got a very keen eye. So she's the quality control. So if she'll pass it and it'll go in her kitchen, then I think we've got something
That's the
that could
seal of
work.
approval.
That is the seal of approval, yeah. But the thing that I love about it, as well as people being able to grow their own at home, the model that they're developing is that there'll be a subscription to the seedlings. So people will order their seedlings from us. So they'll be able to pick from a range of the salad crops, the edible flowers, the herbs, some of the more exotic crops that we touched on before. They'll get sent out. So the kind of hard part often is germinating the seeds, and that takes time. So we'll do that for you. And then also with that subscription, you're supporting our work of supplying produce to food banks and food pantries. So it's a way to sort of democratize and laterally scale the positive impact that we're having. So in my mind, if there's 1,000, 10,000 people got these systems in their homes, getting their own produce sent to the door, and every subscription is supporting the supply of the same really high quality nutritional produce to local food banks and food pantries.
Wow. So it's almost like there's impact baked into the sale of it. It's almost like not like Tom's the shoes, but it's like in the purchasing of a home food system. There's a win all around, because you're getting access to highly nutritious, amazing produce delivered to you, grown at home. Then a portion of that revenue and that profit is then going into obviously the growing of the produce, which is then going back into food banks and other obviously meaningful and purposeful programs.
And I think more and more people there is an awareness of climate and social issues that more people want to contribute towards.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a challenge for businesses to develop products and services that allow people to continue consuming and purchasing the products that they're used to, hopefully high quality products that last, but through that purchase they're able to do some good and to contribute to these wider issues.
Yeah, brilliant. There'll be more on that. So as this exciting project unfolds, I can share more with my network and my community. But I'll one last thing before we go. Is there anything that you would like to say to the listeners of the podcast as a little takeaway? It could be anything from get up earlier, spend more time in nature, like be conscious of the food that you eat. Is there one thing that you would offer as a takeaway for people listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I think maybe it would be like listen more. And I think it's definitely easier to do that in nature, but listen to where you're at. Are you in the right place? Should you be somewhere else? Are you in flow? And I think the body has got a lot of wisdom to offer. And if you're not in flow and you're not where you should be, maybe think about, what could I do differently? How could I start to shift more to a place that is truly serving me and others? And then just one step, take one step. I think acknowledging that and then taking one step can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I think as you touched on earlier, a lot of the environments that people are in, kind of 9-to-5 jobs in the office, artificial light, it makes it difficult to really sense that, and that's where I think nature can really help.
Yeah, getting into nature.
Yeah.
Again, another it's wild, like in terms of like the consistency in the themes of what comes up for the different interviewees around nature. And that's why I've started doing these interviews in nature. Like, one of the practical things that they've all said in a way is just find somewhere, like just get a hammock, set up in some woods, just go for a walk in your local park, just something just that connects you in. So
yeah,
brilliant. Oh, thanks, Paul. It's been been a great interview, and again, there's just so many different questions and different avenues we can go down, but just give us a really amazing sense of like you and your journey and the amazing organisation that is Farm Urban. So thank you.
No, thank you, mate. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.